Look at Minnesota, where Somalians have taken over the economics of the state and have stolen billions and billions of dollars. And what's happening in Minnesota with Somalia, where billions of dollars is being stolen, right, like candy from a baby?
Now, the mainstream media has finally caught on to the fact that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, who, by the way, was for some reason Kamala Harris's choice to be the Veep, is complicit in ignoring a massive welfare fraud scheme perpetrated in his state by largely Somalian immigrants. The New York Times is no longer ignoring this story. They covered it in a devastating report that alleges, quote, fraud swamped Minnesota's social services system on Tim Walz's watch. It's a bombshell story. Let's take one example of the fraud. A nonprofit called Feeding Our Future took government money during COVID that was supposed to go toward buying meals for hungry children. Instead, it went toward luxury cars, even real estate projects abroad. That's right, the fraudster sent American taxpayer dollars out of this country. Of the 86 people charged with the fraud, all but 8 of them were Somalians. And here's where it gets worse. According to whistleblowers, state agents were tacitly approving the fraud because the Somalians have become a powerful constituency in the state of Minnesota. Democrats didn't want to risk losing their support. And Tim Walz himself has admitted that these programs erred on the side of generosity during the pandemic. Well, he was very generous with your money. How nice of him. Quote, the programs are set up to move the money to the people, said Tim Walz in an interview. The programs are set up to improve people's lives, and in many cases, the criminals find the loopholes. It's like he's saying, yeah, we got scammed. Oh, well, we had good intentions. It should be noted, of course, that the New York Times did not break this story. The conservative writer and activist Christopher Rufo got to it first. But because it is a legitimate story, the mainstream media has been guilted into covering it. Now, not all liberal commentators seem to be drawing the same lessons as the New York Times, however. Here were the ladies of The View, redirecting the issue from the failings of Tim Walz to the failings of, well, I bet you can guess who.
Here's what's interesting, because if you're upset about fraud, in 2018, a judge ruled that you know who had to pay $25 million due to his fraudulent university. In February 2024, a New York judge found him, his sons, and his organization liable for fraud. Then 3 months later, he was found guilty on 34 counts of fraud.
Really, Whoopi? We can't talk about something other than something wrong a Democrat did, rather, for more than 2 seconds before you bring up Donald Trump?
The Trump administration says it is now withholding all federal child care funding to the entire state. The agency says the state receives $185 million for 19,000 children, and now that money will be gone. And the agency did not specify any alternate plans for families who will be affected. DHS and the FBI said they were surging resources to Minnesota to investigate what they called suspected fraud sites. This all comes in response to a viral video posted by a MAGA content creator. He claims that he uncovered widespread fraud by Somali-run child care centers in the state. CNN is looking into those claims and has not independently verified the accusations. But the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services is taking the allegations at face value. Take a listen.
Intrepid journalists have made shocking and credible allegations of extensive fraud in Minnesota's child care programs. We believe the state of Minnesota has allowed scammers and fake daycares to siphon millions of taxpayer dollars over the past decade. Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment.
First of all, if there is fraud there, that should be fully investigated, no matter where it is, whether it's in a Democratic-led state, a Republican-led state. I mean, let's pull back. So absolutely, it should be investigated. The question is, you know, why is this a priority in a different kind of way? The politicization of the DOJ and the FBI is undeniable. So whether they are reliable narrators is the big question. And this is what happens when you weaponize and politicize federal agencies that are not meant to be, politicized. And I think the American people are right to ask the question, well, can we trust you? And that's a sad thing to say as an American. Let's recall, too, that there's also other scandals in other states. For example, the Mississippi welfare scandal. And this is not unique to politics. Americans know that. But, of course, the other factor here is that because it looks like the Somali population in Minnesota, the Somali immigrant population may have been involved in some way. Those people are being scapegoated, and that community is being scapegoated in a way that certainly serves the far right. And so that's also something to keep an eye on, and that's inappropriate, absolutely.
We're from CNN. Can we talk to you? This is MAGA YouTuber Nick Shirley. Back at a daycare in Minnesota, he alleged was a fraudulent facility in a now viral video.
People are going to say this is a left or right issue, but no, fraud is fraud. And so I'm not out here trying to put a twist on things.
Shirley's viral video, released over the weekend, in which he says he's uncovering tens of millions of dollars in fraud at Minneapolis daycares run by the Somali community, was retweeted by Elon Musk and Vice President J.D. Vance. In the video, Shirley tries to open locked doors and talk to people at various daycares he claims are frauds.
Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day, later in the day. The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody to be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a
There
daycare.
should be a reception.
No, every daycare is locked.
Their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a child?
Federal law enforcement has been investigating fraud in Minnesota for several years. Both Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel said on social media they've indicted dozens of defendants. DHS has posted multiple videos of agents they say are conducting a massive fraud investigation.
Do you think that federal law enforcement hasn't done enough? I mean, they would say, look, these fraud cases have been going on, but they've already done like 80 indictments. The cases have been going on, for years.
And why did I show up one day in Minnesota and go to all these daycares, no children, they're receiving millions of dollars. We uncovered nearly $110 million in fraud in one day.
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
How do I know that they're true? Well, we showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Hi, my name's Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Have you seen the videos, purporting that some of these daycares don't have kids inside?
Minnesota Republicans say despite the new focus from the Trump administration, they have been sounding the alarm on fraud for years.
We have talked about fraud. We have gotten stories. We've tried to push this forward every way that we can.
At the daycare where Shirley showed back up, a stream of children walk inside.
You're saying that this is a fraudulent daycare. There's kids being dropped off right now.
Yes, the Commissioner of Children literally said a week ago this place was closed.
Did you know
They're
that?
showing face right now.
A viral video, disputed claims, and their full fallout remains to be seen. Dozens of fraud cases that DOJ is touting began during the Biden administration. Back in 2022, the U.S. Attorney's Office for Minnesota announced 47 indictments for this massive fraud scheme. Since then, they've indicted more than 30 more people, and in total, they have secured at least 56 convictions. Whitney Wild, CNN, Minneapolis.
The group chat is back to talk about all of this right now. And Sarah, I want to go to you first. What do we know based on evidence about the alleged fraud in Minnesota and how legitimate and widespread it may be?
Well, I think a lot of people were very apt to believe Shirley's videos because we had indictments in 2022 when reporting first came out about this issue. It was David Fahrenthold, then at the Washington Post, who started to unravel all of these claims. The reason why I think Shirley's post has gone viral amongst some of the conservative community is because Minnesota is a politically convenient target, not just for the president, but for the party. Obviously, the governor there, Tim Walz, was the running mate to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Ilhan Omar has long been a foe of the president's. And you noted up top that the ICE immigration raids on Somalis has been a priority for the president. So all of this collectively has made this story something that people want to gravitate to. And in addition to that, previous reporting that uncovered widespread fraud in Minnesota from years ago also makes people more apt to believe this, where I think a lot of folks in the media, including you mentioned CNN, which is looking to verify this video, are showing pause and trepidation around Shirley's reporting is just that making sure that it's actually verified that it's showing fraud in a similar way that we all evaluated the initial reporting that came out in 2022.
It's Democrats who have put Somali diaspora in Minneapolis at the center of their party and their state's politics. It's a small portion of the population. There is a bunch of fraud that goes on. And even Tim Walz has claimed that any investigation of this fraud is akin to white supremacy,
No,
which is
he
a
hasn't.
ridiculous
He has not claimed
allegation.
that. He has not said that.
He has said that.
He has not said that.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy, the idea of white supremacy, the idea of white supremacy, the idea of white supremacy.
Attorney General Pam Bondi, I wanted to bring this up with you as well because, you know, she essentially referenced your family, your son. She says, this is Attorney General Pam Bondi of the DOJ. Nick Shirley's work has helped show Americans the scale of fraud in Tim Walz's Minnesota. The Justice Department has been investigating this for months. So far, we have charged 98 individuals, 85 of Somali descent, and more than 60 have been found guilty in court. Obviously, it's not a one-off. But when you see this, the Department of Justice, the AG, noting that your son helped this federal investigation, how does that make you as a mother, and really ultimately as you are very passionate about what you do as an investigator, how does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel proud that what we're doing is getting noticed, because the way I think of it is, if your house is burning down, are you going to try to stop the fire, or are you just going to let it burn? And our lawmakers in America have just let our country burn. They're the ones to blame. They're the ones who've allowed the Somalians to get away with it. The Somalians, they have a perfect scheme. They found out a perfect way to take taxpayer dollars. But the bottom line is our government leaders are the ones who have allowed this to happen. Tim Walz knew this was going on, and instead of doing anything about it, he calls people that are trying to call it out, like my son Nick Shirley, a white supremacist. They're not saying, you know, thank you for showing this. Thank you for showing what's going on. Instead, we're called white supremacists because we're trying to save our country. The people in Minnesota are thankful for this. Pam Bondi obviously is, because we're doing the work for them. They could have done this themselves, but it's literally taking people like me, my son. We're the ones out there showing what's going on because people are too afraid. Sorry, my voice is coming out. People are too afraid.
Let me jump in, Brooke, if I can, because I wanted to just reference something or give my viewers a point of reference. Control, this is AA32. You alluded to Governor Walz pushing back on your son and labeling him a white supremacist. We have that. Here it is.
This is what happens when your own federal government wages war against you. This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat. And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy. When you hear the Vice President of the United States talk about now white people won't have to apologize for being white. That's never happened once in my whole damn life.
Now, what are your thoughts there? You shared a little bit on it, but listening to it back right now in this moment.
It just makes me angry. It makes me angry that he would say that about all the people who live in Minnesota. You know, he's speaking about his people, and he's saying that word about them. And it makes me angry, and it makes me feel sad. It makes me feel sad for the people in Minnesota, because he works for them. Yeah. He's not protecting his people in Minnesota. He's protecting a certain community, a certain, and I wouldn't even, I don't know, you know, to call them a race, a certain race. He's only protecting a certain group in his community. And it shouldn't be like that. He's the governor of Minnesota. He's not the governor of a certain group in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. He needs to worry about his whole state, just not a certain group. And it makes me very mad. And I think it's unfair to the people of Minnesota because the hardworking Minnesotans are being robbed of their money. And the people that are taking their money, you know, they're running these daycares, they're running all these businesses, all in Minnesota, and they're living high on the hog. They're driving.
And it really goes
nice
back
cars.
to, it just goes back to, Brooke, I apologize jumping in, but it's the old playbook. I mean, you bring it back to race and now you're having a race debate. That's not what this is about. This is about the fraud that's taking place and the law enforcement that needs to happen and how this happened under the governor's watch and others.